The longest-running rivalry in major college football is Minnesota and Wisconsin. Not to hoist a trophy, but to swing the axe. The handle has the score of every game the Gophers and Badgers have played.
For the win.
In 03, with a last-second field goal.
Paul Bunyan's axe goes to Minnesota.
In 05,
oh, he fumbled it.
With a last-minute block punt.
It's blocked unbelievably.
Now, will the Gophers have a score to settle? Can the Badgers keep hold of Paul Bunyan's pride? Chop that.
They play for Paul Bunyan's axe, and the idea behind the axe when it was invented is to lessen the pressure on the person wielding it while he's chopping something down. The pressure's on Minnesota to get the thing back. It's been at Wisconsin for 14 consecutive years, and so the most important guy is Bryce Turnus. He's the guy carrying the thing inside Camp Randall Stadium. The manager for the Wisconsin Badgers, be careful with it. It's one of the most important rivalries in the Big Ten and one of the oldest. First meeting 1890, the 128th time they've gotten together, and it's been since 2003 that the Gophers have won one of these things. Jason Benetti, Kelly Stauffer, Olivia Decker along with you. So, look, what does Minnesota have for the Badgers today? A chance?
I do think a chance, but it's really interesting to me. Rivalry games come from the heart, and you have to kind of experience it. Well, most of Minnesota's side of the ball haven't experienced it. They're an incredibly young team, the youngest team in the FBS level. Wisconsin, on the other hand, they're war horses. They have a lot of guys. They have a bunch of seniors that are 41-11 with Paul Chryst, and they know how to win this game, and they don't want to be the team that gives up the axe, and they're going to hitch the wagon to Jonathan Taylor early and often. Jonathan Taylor, to me, is an elite back for this reason. His vision, speed, and finesse, and patience. And oh, by the way, every game plan is set to stop this young man, but he's still incredibly productive in the face of all of that. Pretty amazing.
Look at the names that he has passed for the most combined rush yards for the first 2 years. Ron Dane from here in Madison, Herschel Walker, University of Georgia. So that's what Minnesota has to stop today, one of the best backs in the country. And what's at stake for the Gophers is a lot. Can you get those extra bowl practices, get P.J. Fleck into a bowl in his second season? The axe has been on the Wisconsin sideline for 14 consecutive years. And can you win in Madison for the first time since 1994? And can you tie the series, which has come back into Wisconsin's column? So the Badgers ready to jump around for one last time at Camp Randall Stadium on a chilly late November afternoon. Meantime, P.J. Fleck, always well-dressed, always elite, as he says, and always rowing the boat, trying to steer that ship to a win in this series. After 14 consecutive losses for the Gophers, it dates back to a 2003 date in the Metrodome. Jim Sorgi and Assad Abdul Khalik were the quarterbacks. Last time Minnesota beat Wisconsin for Paul Bunyan's axe. One last go around at Camp Randall for the Badgers, and the wind makes its presence felt. It is such a difficult game, and even sometimes the simplest of motions can be strenuous on a windy, chilly November afternoon. For the axe and the border, Wisconsin and Minnesota underway. Demetrius Douglas, the freshman, back to receive. Quarterback questions for both teams. Who's going to signal call for Minnesota? Olivia Decker.
Well, Minnesota had a pick between two freshman quarterbacks today, and Tanner Morgan will get the start. He started the last four, and Zach Annexstad is available. He started the first 7, true freshman. Coach Fleck just told me he would love to stick with one quarterback today, and there are no special packages or situations for either quarterback. The reason they went with Tanner Morgan is because Coach Fleck thinks he can hold up better in this game. He's more gutsy, more mobile, and even more mobile out of the pocket.
Well, we'll see whether or not both do end up playing, but as Olivia just said, they're both available, and it's been that way throughout this season. The Gophers have wanted one quarterback and haven't been able to land on one. First throw is a completion for a big hit for the Gophers to Tyler Johnson, their leading receiver. His 71st catch of the year. It's a gain of 23.
And Tanner Morgan, Olivia alluded to this, a lot of the pass game is outside the pocket. It's boots and nakeds and things that they get the quarterback on the run. And Wisconsin defensively is going to try to light up whoever Minnesota has at that quarterback position.
Notably, the Gophers all wearing Minnesota on the backs of their jerseys. They're not all named for their school. Just short of midfield, first down. Morgan too high and incomplete. Johnson was open and he airmailed it.
I'm sure with Tanner Morgan, there's a lot of juice flowing early in this one, and it's important to get settled down. I would expect some throws to allow Tanner Morgan to do just that. That one was just a little bit too high, went to the right place, just threw the wrong kind of football.
It was either Tanner Morgan or Zach Annexted. Both with very little time under their belts, just one season combined of FBS football. See how much pressure Jim Leonard brings as that ball is incomplete. Third down, and Henningsen with the tip on that ball. Annexted is the other quarterback, the freshman out of the state of Minnesota. He is on the sideline for now, but we may see him, as Olivia reported.
Annexted is a great story. He's a walk-on, turned down some Power 5 offers to walk on at Minnesota, and his family certainly has a legacy there, but an early important down for Tanner Morgan, his counterpart.
Bottom half of the FBS on third down for Minnesota. Morgan, incomplete. Ibrahim, the intended target, the back, and after a positive first play, it bogged down.
Yeah, and two tip passes on second and third down collectively, and that's what Wisconsin will do, JB, on defensive side, is they're going to show pressure and sometimes bail out, and they were on that play, but they affected the decision maker nonetheless.
Herbers to punt. Jack Dunn to receive, but he's not going to get a chance to do much with this. A short kick. And Wisconsin has the ball, so now who's going to play quarterback for them, Olivia?
Well, Alex Hornibrook will start this one after missing most of the last 4 going through concussion protocol. He was just starting to practice middle of the week. Coaches wanted to see how he would handle that, and then just recently decided he could play today. His backup, Jack Cohn, who started the last 3, he is cleared to play, and Coach Chris said whoever gives us the best chance to win is who will play. Now, if he plays today at all, he'll burn his redshirt option. That'll be his 5th game, excuse me. And Coach Chris told me they're not even thinking about that.
Yeah, that's a side plot certainly they might think about later, but you see the win percentage. Hornibrook, the best in Wisconsin history so far. And part of that is because of this guy, Jonathan Taylor, right up the seam for a first down run. It took Huff, the safety, to knock him down after 12.
And that is certainly what you're going to see. It's the calling card for Wisconsin football. It's kind of a program-wide calling card, and Jonathan Taylor is the latest in the group of great backs that have gone through this place and played a lot of downs here at Camp Randall. But it's a physical line of scrimmage to set the tone early.
They're without their regular right tackle, Edwards. Logan Bruss is in for him as Taylor sets up a second down. Here's how Hornibrook got injured. November 3rd, he ends up hitting his head on the turf on this play here at Camp Randall, which put him out for a couple of weeks, got Cohen into the game, and now ready to go today, Alex Hornibrook.
Yeah, and then from that point forward, it's the concussion protocol, and it's a medical decision. But there were good signs early in this week because Alex got to practice extensively and practice well.
Draw. Taylor. Minnesota was on its heels, and a first down, Wisconsin inside the 35. And you could expect that Jonathan Taylor would be one of our impact players.
Yeah, I would say the impact's going to be about 30 to 35 carries, and Davis is the other guy.
Not one of your
yeah, no question. That was a pretty good call to put him in there. But then it's Cashman, Blake Cashman, the linebacker, who is a pleasure to watch play the game. He's a great tackler because of his closing speed. He rarely misses a tackle. It's going to be a good matchup today for this Wisconsin offensive line.
Jonathan Taylor just hit 1,900 yards and went over it. Jonathan Taylor, consecutive seasons FBS history, he is on the way to some big-time names. Marcus Allen, Ricky Williams, LaDainian Tomlinson, all of those guys are still available as possible chase downs for Taylor this year with a bowl game looming.
Yeah, and he's probably going to reel some of those in. And it's in the face of every game plan defensively to stop number 23, but his production is still climbing the record books.
He's out of the game now. Taiwan Deal, who's back healthy, is back in. And he's snowed under by Kamal Martin, the linebacker, and his cavalry. Third down coming up. I mean, this rivalry has been all Wisconsin the last decade and a half. And you said it, Minnesota is so young over on that sideline. They don't even have a protocol for who would go and grab the axe from the Wisconsin sideline, as is customary in this game.
Yeah, and trust me, they'll figure that out if indeed they get to go put their hands on the axe for the first time in 15 games. We'll see how this one plays out.
Hornibrook on third down. Fires for a first down inside the 20-yard line. Jake Ferguson, the tight end, with his 30th grab. 24 have gone for a first down.
And this one does as well. Jake Ferguson is the tight end that's a really good route runner and a better blocker than actually Wisconsin thought that he would be. And that's exactly where Jake Ferguson needs to make a living today. You're going to see a lot of one high safety out of Minnesota, man-to-man underneath, a lot of grass in the middle of that field for tight ends to run routes.
Deal back in, and he breaks one tackle to turn the legs. You know, Ferguson is from a very important family in terms of athletic prowess. His father, Brad, a football player in Nebraska. His brother, Joe, a safety here at Wisconsin.
That sounds like a very important name around here.
Highly thought of family members for Jake Ferguson.
Are you leaving anything out of that story? Is there more to come, or are we good with that one?
I actually think Wisconsin fans by now know that Barry Alvarez is his grandfather, but they can correct you if they want to on Twitter. Deal gets a carry, and he was going sideways. So third down coming up for Wisconsin, third and short inside the red zone.
And if you can run the football effectively, as obviously Wisconsin can, they score 70% of the time touchdowns here in the red zone because they typically are in favorable down and distances. But this is where Hornibrook also needs to be an impeccable decision maker, and I think that's the biggest improvement in his game, even though it was derailed to some extent because of the games he missed because of that concussion. Hornibrook has to be able to make good decisions right here.
They go empty with Groshek split out wide on third down. To the end zone, incomplete. Danny Davis latched onto by Coney Durr, and it's field goal time for Wisconsin.
And Davis was in the slot and actually runs the fade route from the inside slot position. Durr actually had very good coverage. Obviously, Paul Chris did not believe so. He thought that was pass interference. And the ball was just actually thrown out of bounds. I have a pet peeve with not giving your wide receiver an opportunity to catch the football on a fade route in the end zone, and that was a good example of it.
Rafael Gaglianone from 31 for the first points of this Paul Bunyan's Axe game, and it's no good. Gaglianone misses wide.
Rafael Gaglianone knew right away that he pushes this. Highly unusual. You can't keep the axe if you do stuff like this.
Morgan down the middle. He's gotten a couple of those quick slants. This one to Ottman Bell, Chris Ottman Bell, the freshman, on a gain of 16.
And Ottman Bell is really the third one of those wide receivers. Tyler Johnson is the alpha in that receiving corps from Minnesota, and one of the best receivers in this conference. And then Rashad Bateman, the true freshman, is that electric guy that they move around, and they built touches for number 13 as well.
Morgan, tip ball again. Third time he's He's had one tip. This is Van Ginkel, the linebacker.
JB Van Ginkel is the outside linebacker. It's typically a 30 front, meaning 3 down linemen, but they add, does Wisconsin, an outside linebacker to that rush, and Van Ginkel is one of those guys that can get after the passer, but if you're not going to get home, get your hands up, and that's the 3rd tipped pass against Tanner Morgan here today.
How can Morgan work on that? What can he do?
There's not a whole lot you can do because he flashes late. Sometimes you can steer around that guy, but when he's on the line of scrimmage and is just playing the football, it's very, very difficult.
Ibrahim broke a tackle and finds his way to the 50-yard line. First down, Minnesota. TJ Edwards, another one of their senior linebackers for Wisconsin with the stop. They're going to lose so much in that second level after the bowl game.
You talk about experience, and that's really been the stabilizing factor for Wisconsin defensively. They've been banged up in front of that linebacking group and also on the back end of this in that secondary, but that group of linebackers is really second to none in this country in terms of experience and production.
Morgan, weak side pressure, and he got it off just in time for Tyler Johnson on a first down. He's one of our impact players. Cal, you picked very well today.
Thank you. Tyler Johnson is the volume catcher for this offense, and Ibrahim, the question is, where would Minnesota's running game be without that young man? And it's the 2 safeties on the back end, Scott Nelson and Dakota Dixon. Nelson has been banged up, had a great week of work from his hammy that is feeling much better, and Dixon is just that impactful leader on the back end and really program-wide for Wisconsin.
They're going to lose a lot in that safety meeting room when Dixon leaves. Scott Nelson actually said this week, the free safety, he's going to try and soak up as much as possible before Dixon leaves. Another slant and another connection. Rashad Bateman, another freshman, and a first down, Minnesota.
A lot of times, Wisconsin defensively will play quarters coverage on the back end. And sometimes they press the corners, sometimes they play off. But by and large, quarters coverage, when you hear that, once the defenders in the back end see the route combinations, it turns into man-to-man all the time. So right now it's run-pass option offensively with Minnesota and finding lanes in that secondary against that man-to-man coverage off of quarters.
This run goes nowhere. Bryce Williams, freshman out of Sarasota, hit by Zach Baum, the linebacker. Second down. So all Morgan so far, other than the one Wildcat run for Green, and Minnesota moving the ball pretty well.
And we will see Seth Green again. He's a 6'4", 240-pound Swiss Army knife in a sense. They tried to play him at tight end in the spring. They moved him to wide receiver. Now he's listed as a running back, but play him where you want.
Big piece of cutlery right there.
No question.
Doesn't fit in a regular drawer. Morgan 3 for 4, 45 yards of the drive. Ibrahim back in at tailback. Run it again. And he's inside the red zone. Edwards again on the stop. He and Connolly worked so well together at that linebacker spot, and the clock operator's not going to have to hit that stop button too much in this game, you wouldn't imagine.
No, not at all. But who Minnesota wants to be offensively is they want to not look dissimilar to Wisconsin. They want to have a very physical presence in the run game in that tackle box, and they do it more out of the RPO in their passing game as opposed to outright play-action pass a la Minnesota offensive, or excuse me, Wisconsin offensively.
Third down screen pass will not get them to the marker. Autman Bell hit by Connolly. Fourth down. You kicking here?
I think you're kicking here first and foremost because I saw PJ Flick send his field goal team onto the field, so I saw the answer to the test.
Thanks, Karnak. Got the envelope on your forehead. It's
but
nice.
I think points are precious, regardless if they're of the 3 variety. We've seen Gaglianone miss a gimme early in this one, so I think Minnesota to jump out a lead would be good mentally for them. They've lost 14 of these in a row, by the way.
Emmett Carpenter bidding for the first points, and he is true. They won it on a field goal 15 years ago. They lead it on a field goal here in the game for Paul Bunyan's Aggies. It's a 3-0 lead so far, and something of a ragged game for the Badgers in the first 12 minutes and change. Aaron Cruikshank back to receive. Touchback. There's a story in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune earlier this week. The reporter called Reese Lloyd, and the first thing he said was, "Every year like clockwork, the phone rings." Somebody needs to get the Gophers a new star in this rivalry, because Reese Lloyd's phone is ringing off the hook. Here's what's changed since 2003. LeBron James was a rookie. Eli Manning was at Ole Miss. A-Rod was an MVP for the Rangers. And Jim Leonard, the defensive coordinator, was a DB that year. Punt returner as well.
Very good DB.
He's fun to talk to. We enjoy
really
Jim Leonard's company.
You learn things when you talk to Jim Leonard. A great defensive mind.
Alex Hornibrook to throw down the middle. He's got himself a first down to the 40, and A.J. Taylor, the junior out of Kansas City.
Terrific catch by A.J. Taylor. This ball is high and behind Taylor, and he does a great job of snatching it. But that's the area that there's room to be had when you're running routes against the one high safety man-to-man underneath. You have to win at the slot position or an inline tight end and get to the middle of the field and get separation, and Hornibrook can find you.
Badgers and Gophers together again. 14 straight for Wisconsin, but Minnesota's got the lead after 15. Welcome to ESPN College Football, presented by ExxonMobil as part of the Jiffy Lube Rivalry Series. Couple quarters shy of jump around in Madison, and the Badgers offense has not done much jumping around at all. It's 3-0 Minnesota off an Emmett Carpenter field goal, and Hornibrook is wide. His completion percentage is down this year as compared to past years, but there have been some signs of improvement in small ways.
Yeah, in small ways. I think by and large, I think he's reading things well. He's getting through his progressions more quickly. I just think right now we're seeing a little bit of rustiness. Game time. You can't simulate this stuff in practice. When guys are coming after you in a live way, quarterbacks don't get hit in practice. You get hit in games, and right now Hornibrook's just a little off.
Back to Taylor. And third down coming up. Chris Cotter on the Iron Bowl. Michigan gave up more points than John Beilein's team has.
That 62 hung on him. I mean, that's the most scored in the series versus Michigan. 115 meetings. The most points scored in that game.
Hornibrook slings it inside the 30. It's a first down for Wisconsin. Danny Davis again, the target, and a gain of 10.
Great job by Alex Hornibrook, kind of manipulating the pocket. Had to buy a little bit of time. Eventually, Danny Davis got open against that man-to-man coverage on the back end that Minnesota lives and dies with. A little bit of separation, but it was become the left-hander. Hornibrook stepped up in the pocket and threw a strike to Danny Davis.
6 out of 8, 57 yards for Hornibrook. Counter action, Taylor. Huff with the stop. Chris Cotter in the studio. Here's the bacon. That's the original trophy. You see, if you turn it one way, then it's a W. Turn it the other way,
I heard you the first time, but that was never bacon. We've established that, right?
Well, it's a slab of bacon.
Because Minnesota plays for another piece of bacon against Iowa.
Floyd of
Rosedale, and that's literally, at one time that was literally bacon. It was the prize pig, and they turned that into a trophy too. I don't think they turned that into the pig into a trophy, but you get my point.
I have spent 72 hours with Bill Walton. I didn't need that. Third down coming up for Wisconsin off the hit to Danny Davis.
Throw it down, big fella. What's your name again?
Okay.
I like my bike. I like my bike. I like volcanoes.
It's third down, Wisconsin. He's Kelly Stauffer. Olivia Decker's downstairs. I believe I'm Jason Benetti. And we thank you for joining us on this cool Midwestern day. Third down, Wisconsin. Hornibrook. Intercepted. Tony Durr. That was right into his hands. And he's across the 40-yard line to the celebration on the Gophers sideline. A 24-yard return.
This is a classic example of a quarterback making up his mind before he actually reads the defense. That was the last place to go with the football, and I think Hornibrook just made a decision early. And Durr got underneath it, but the safety, Jacob Huff, was coming over the top, and the receiver was also covered man-to-man in his hip pocket. There was a triangle around the guy that Hornibrook decided to throw the football to, I think, before he actually took the snap.
Rust again, you think?
I think so. I think sometimes you just get a little bit off when you haven't practiced extensively, and we're seeing a little bit of that out of Hornibrook early in this one.
Morgan giving ground off his back foot. Good news, this guy's wide open. Tyler Johnson had nobody near him. A first down, Gophers. 28 yards.
Tyler Johnson makes a great adjustment. He starts to the middle of the field, fills man-to-man coverage on his backside, and turns back outside, and his receiver understood the adjustment that Tyler Johnson was making. Don't run to be covered, run to get open, and Tyler Johnson showed it on that play.
You can see the instincts of a former high school quarterback, Tyler Johnson, helping out his quarterback here in college. That's the longest play of this game at 28 yards. Morgan sees a crease to the 25. Under 7 to go in the first half and a 3-0 score. Ibrahim is hit behind the line. Van Ginkel, one of those 3 senior linebackers with the stop. He's been the pass rusher, but they're a nice run play.
Yeah, and a lot of times you can blitz the run as well. I think that was a great job of understanding what Minnesota wanted to do on second and short. Jim Leonard brought a blitz, but it was really to stop the run that Wisconsin anticipated right there.
Third down, 6. Morgan, the freshman. Walls cave in. He's on the roll. Morgan is clipped before he can get to the marker. TJ Edwards, they hit. Do you go for it?
I think you do go for it right here. I think it's going to be 4th and probably a good 1, maybe 1.5 yards. And I like what I see out of Tanner Morgan currently, making really good decisions. And that was one of them. On first down, it was a run-pass option, and nothing was there in the throw, and he read it as really the third option. So I think Minnesota's going to roll the dice right here.
Minnesota has not been very efficient on 4th down this year. PJ Fleck told us this week they're going to have to be aggressive every way they can think of to win this game. On 4th down, we'll see if they snap it. They do. Green for a first down, Minnesota inside the 20. A little post-play interaction between these two bordering schools.
Remember, Seth Green is 240 pounds, and so he's a really good athlete at that wildcat position, and Minnesota has done that throughout the season. The motion by Jake Paulson, the tight end, coming from the outside back into the box is just to add another big body at 280 pounds. And then it's just a matter of moving mass up front and getting 1.5 yards, and Minnesota was successful right there.
Ibrahim hit after a very short gain. Remember, Minnesota hasn't won this series since 2003. This is a freshman-laden team. More than half the guys on that sideline are freshmen, so they're going to have to learn on the fly how to win this game.
And P.J. Fleck is in charge of teaching them how to win it. And he's new to this rivalry, but he's played in them and coached in other rivalries. But the way you lead them is you have to do stuff like that. You have to execute on 4th and 1.5 and convert to try to get a touchdown as opposed to try another field goal. That's the way you get the Axe back after losing it 14 straight times, even though this team on the field has had nothing to do with that.
Ibrahim again, and he'll be a yard short. 3rd down and 1 coming up for Minnesota. In every Wisconsin win of those 14 straight, the Badgers have had a 100-yard rusher. So it's fitting that Minnesota is doing a significant amount of damage on this drive on the ground.
Yeah, Minnesota wants to run it. That's their MO offensively as well. They want to be a physical run team, and conversely, when you play Jonathan Taylor, you have to start there. You have to stop him and hold up in everything else.
Green again out of the Wildcat. Up the middle. And they're only going to give him the 10 on the initial spot. Now the near side official is about half a yard further. Edwards the stop, and it's 4th down.
If you're Minnesota, I think you have to like the way your offensive line is playing up front. There's not a ton of leakage from the blitz looks that Wisconsin likes to bring.
That was an unfortunate spot, I think, for the Gophers there. So 2:25 officially on the clock in a run-heavy first half. Green will be the quarterback on 4th down and an inch.
We're probably going to be seeing a repeat of 3rd down.
Ibrahim, touchdown! That's what they wanted you to think. Touchdown, Gophers.
And it was the exact same presentation where the tight end Jake Paulson starts outside and motions inside. On the 3rd down play, Seth Green just essentially ran a power play or a lead play off the right tackle, and this time it was a true quarterback read, and he gives it up to Ibrahim untouched around the left side. Well executed by Minnesota.
9-play touchdown drive. The final 8 plays of said drive were all runs. 5:46 on that drive as Minnesota grinds out the clock, and Wisconsin will have one more possession in this quick-moving first half. They'll get it at the 25. Chris Cotter. And Wisconsin and Minnesota are 10-zip so far. Taylor gets chopped down at the 31 by Jacob Huff, who socked him from the safety spot.
And Wisconsin continues to count on the first down run, but Hornibrook has to make great decisions and down and distances just like this.
Hornibrook gets it away to Kendrick Pryor. The 26. They looked like they were teammates in a dance competition. That's how much of a hold that was. And with 3rd down coming up, Wisconsin's got a guard against Minnesota having one more drive in the tank. Early snap, Hornibrook dropped, flat out dropped by A.J. Taylor. A rough drive for that junior wide receiver.
Really well done in terms of ball placement by Alex Hornibrook, but watch A.J. Taylor at the very end. His head goes up, but my question is, where would he think he was going? You should be going outside with that football anyway. His head went up as if he was going to turn back inside. That wouldn't have been the right decision at this time in the game where there's short time left, about 1:20. He should have been following the ball and going out of bounds.
Kel, that was a 59-second 3-and-out. Douglas on the approach. Took a moment to let it settle. Demetrius Douglas for Minnesota. He has goal line on his mind. Touchdown, Gophers. Last time they scored in 5:46. This time it was about 10 seconds.
Well, if Minnesota wants to get the Axe back after 14 failed attempts, you have to do stuff like this. Demetrius Douglas does a great job of the punt returner has to make the first wave miss, and then you have a chance in the open field. And Douglas did a masterful job, but in the Axe game, you have to stop Jonathan Taylor, and you have to make things happen. 4th down situations, Minnesota made it happen and got into the end zone with Ibrahim, and then it's Douglas on a huge special teams play.
Last time Minnesota crossed the finish line in first place in Madison, Darrell Bevell, the former Seahawks offensive coordinator, was the quarterback for Wisconsin. But Tutu Atwell, the elder Tutu Atwell, a 32-yard touchdown. Gophers got the win in Madison, 17-14, and the Axe was on its way to the Twin Cities. Most of the people wearing Gopher stuff that are of the younger persuasion have only seen maybe 1 or 2 Gopher wins in their lifetime. 2 touchdowns in 76 seconds have certainly helped the case here. Cruikshank will take it out, and he loses about a yard on that decision. They'll run it with Taylor, and he zigzags for a first down. He's been their best offense so far, and it's not close. Now he's going to come off the field. Groshek, the tailback, clock winding. Hornibrook down the middle. He's got Danny Davis. Ball on the deck. And Wisconsin did get back on it with Ferguson. This half needs to end for the Badgers.
Yeah, and Wisconsin is going to call a timeout to try to extend it. But I think Danny Davis might have been down, even though Wisconsin jumped on it anyway. But remember what we have on the line here. It's not only the Axe, but the fact that Minnesota hasn't won the Axe since 2003. They haven't won at Camp Randall since '94.
Minnesota shutting Wisconsin out for the most part without Blake Cashman, the linebacker, the senior, who's gone out after a targeting penalty. There, Coughlin with the stop and a first down. Coughlin was coming. Hornibrook gets it away and out of bounds to Davis once again. So they're roughly in field goal range. Gaglianone so far has a long of 42 this year, but he does have a strong leg.
And I like the way Hornibrook has looked on this 2-minute situation. Wisconsin has 1 timeout, actually 2 timeouts left. But sometimes it's interesting that the 2-minute drill in football kind of lights a fire under an offense that's been somewhat lethargic today, has Wisconsin. So maybe this will be it for them if they can get points and then go into that second half and they get the football back coming out of halftime.
Very important point. They will see the football first. Down to the ground, a beautiful grab by the tight end Ferguson. You got to bury a timeout.
Yeah, I could see Wisconsin, Paul Chris running down the sideline to burn one of those 2 timeouts remaining, and Wisconsin will have 1 left. So with 17 seconds, theoretically, you can certainly do about anything you want.
17 seconds, Hornibrook launches, incomplete. That was into traffic, and Jacob Huff slanging into Ferguson. 5 seconds off the clock, 12 remaining.
2nd and 10 with 12 seconds left and a timeout in your pocket, you can do the same thing all over again. Throw the ball to the middle of the field if need be. The question I have for Wisconsin, we had it in week 1 when we were in here. Where are their plays on the perimeter? Their receivers aren't making plays outside.
Their longest pass play this year is 44 yards. All year long in 11 games. Groshek on the run. They'll use the timeout. 6 seconds remaining. So the question is, do you run one more play or do you take the 3 and make it a 2-score game?
You can logistically run one more play with 6 seconds. It has to be quick into the end zone, probably a fade into the back corner.
Hornibrook taking his time, into the end zone. Touchdown, Wisconsin. Ferguson with 1 second.
See, they had 1 whole second left. And I think Minnesota defensively thought that they were going to throw the fade quickly like I had talked about, and the Nuns certainly like it, dressed up in Wisconsin garb. But the game they played with Jake Ferguson at the tight end, that was surprising, but nonetheless well executed with 1 whole second left.
Divine Axe intervention. And that will do it for half number 1. Minnesota and Wisconsin will continue to battle for the axe. Kelly and I will bury the hatchet. And we'll go back to the studio for the halftime report. Chris Cotter, Emmanuel Acho, Jim Mora. 17-7 Gophers. Perfect place to row the boat is the Isthmus of Madison. Water all around here in Madison, Wisconsin. The question is, can they hang on? Can they get an axe to go along with their oars? 2 years ago here in Madison, same score. Wisconsin came back and won. So the question is, how do they stick to this lead and put it away?
Do those people realize they actually didn't have an oar? There was no oar in that picture.
Well, the oar means it's optional. That's why it's oar.
Minnesota looked like the best team in the first half. They're the youngest team in the country. They will know what they're playing for in the second half. We'll see if they can stick with it. It's going to take a complete game out of Minnesota. Hornibrook for Wisconsin has to be better in the second half. He was rusty in the first half. The balls were thrown off target. He made that one horrendous decision, and Minnesota capitalized on it. This is going to be an interesting one down the stretch here.
Wisconsin does get it first, and they'll have it at the 25. Good news for Wisconsin, though, is that final drive when they did punch it in with a second to go in that first half. Hornibrook dancing, and he drops it off to Taylor, who doesn't catch the ball much. He did there. Olivia just caught up with Paul Christ.
Well, Coach, you score on your final drive. What can you adjust on offense to be a little more efficient?
Well, I mean, we've got to, obviously we had the 1 turnover in the red zone. We didn't finish our first drive into the red zone. We just got to go make plays, and we've got to obviously still have a good mix of run and pass. It's going to take everyone, and it's another half of football.
You told us that this rivalry is the most intense of your season. With that in mind, what did you tell your guys in the locker room?
Well, I mean, right now you got to go play the game, and you got to play each play, and obviously we got to make some plays, and you want to enjoy the opportunities to play against a very good team, and we got another half or more of football.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
And this is going to be 4th down and 3. What you doing, Kelly Stauffer?
Paul Crisp seems to be playing things right down the middle, but it appears right here, I would think typically he would punt and gain field position, but I think with the momentum that his team gained at the end of the first half with that late touchdown, he wants his offense to get something on this drive, and so therefore, 4th and about 4, it would appear that Wisconsin is going for it. Look for the hard count right now out of Alex Hornibrook.
Hornibrook off his back foot. Incomplete. He wanted Taylor. He missed him. And Minnesota takes over.
And that was incredibly poor execution. Danny Davis was once again in his slot position. Actually, this time it was A.J. Taylor. Slot position, going to run a fade outside, and just woefully thrown and also poorly executed by the 2 receivers to that side.
Minnesota goes with him, and he puts the shoulder down and barrels through the Badgers for a first down. Scott Nelson got a face full of him on an 18-yard ramble.
Ibrahim is set to only be 205 pounds at 5'10", but he's a physical runner. You can see that on tape. He does a great job of finishing runs. Typically, it's not only yards after contact, but it's going forward at contact, and you saw it front and center on that play.
Out of Olney, Maryland, good counsel. Strong basketball program there. He comes to Minnesota. Straight ahead, and Nelson got him this time. That was some vengeance for the freshman out of Detroit, Scott Nelson.
So, Jason, what Minnesota does offensively is they a lot of times play box numbers, and they will formation accordingly, and then Tanner Morgan basically counts numbers in the box. Is it a favorable look? If so, we run it. If it's not, a lot of times off that run pass option, he'll pull it and throw behind that coverage.
For people who don't know, in the box, meaning what?
It's tackle to tackle, essentially, or tight end to tight end. How many hats are in the box to defend the run, and do we have leverage or do we not?
So 7 here as Morgan goes sideline, a lot of contact, and a flag comes down. Johnson got wrangled by Rashad Wildgoose, and it's going to be first down Minnesota.
The Tyler Johnson is a dynamic receiver at 6'2", and he was going up to get this football, and Wildgoose was holding on to him, and Johnson couldn't even get off the carpet.
Pass interference, defense, number 5, 15-yard penalty, automatic first down.
And I really like this matchup if I'm Minnesota. Tyler Johnson, one of the best perimeter receivers in the Big Ten, against Wildgoose, who's a freshman. That Jim Leonard, the defensive coordinator for Wisconsin, really likes, and thought that Wildgoose may become the starter as the season went along, but Wildgoose was in great shape and then panicked late in that coverage.
So you're saying that Jim Leonard hoped that he would chase down that position?
Yeah, and
Wildgoose.
I think, yeah. I'm not Bill Walton. Don't go there with me.
Now it's going to be the Wildcat for the Gophers. They've got Green in, along with Ibrahim. Green inside the 10. Isaiah Loudermilk with the stop. He had offseason knee surgery in June, missed the beginning of the year, and now has stepped in for a defensive line that's been beleaguered by injuries, with Olive Sangapolu out for the year.
Yeah, that's huge. With Sangapolu out, who typically is the nose tackle and is supposed to occupy a center and a guard typically, and Loudermilk is the one defender on the defensive line of scrimmage that makes Wisconsin different, but that difference has been lessened greatly because of the injury to Loudermilk throughout this year.
Minnesota hasn't beaten Wisconsin since 2003. Morgan trying to help out, and he misfires. Third down coming up.
And Morgan just did not get his feet set. Colton Beebe was the tight end, coming underneath that and leaking into the flat and wide open. If you put the ball on number 44 Beebe, he has a chance to get that in the end zone. But Tanner Morgan got stuck a little bit on his ball handling to Ibrahim and just did not get his feet set on that throw.
1 for 6 on third down in a game they lead by 10. A lot of time left on the play clock. They run. Ibrahim breaks 2 tackles and finds his way to the 5-yard line. What are you doing here? You kicking, or you being aggressive again?
I think I'm kicking.
Really?
Yeah.
Why so?
I don't like the way my offensive line responded on that run right there. And I think over time, we've seen more runs because I think Minnesota has liked their offensive line, but that one wasn't a good outing. So I think we take the points to get something off of this drive. I think mentally that's the right decision here.
Emmett Carpenter from 23. It's good, and Minnesota leads 20-7.
That has been the difference down the stretch for Notre Dame offensively.
Cruikshank from the 5. No fair catch this time. He's got a seam. Outside to the 28, and the ball came loose down the sideline, and Wisconsin gets on top of it. Huff knocked it free, flag in as well.
Right now, there just isn't a lot of confidence offensively for Wisconsin, and they're not exactly a team that's built to have explosive plays and come back anyway.
Except for this guy. Jonathan Taylor tripped up by the Camp Randall turf at the 32. It's a gain of 20.
And when you're playing Wisconsin, you always have to keep an eye on the run game effect in the second half. Wisconsin is a power run team. Sometimes it doesn't look good in the first half, but it pays dividends in the second half, especially the fourth quarter.
Hornibrook drops it off And not going anywhere. Julian Huff in for Blake Cashman, who was out with a targeting penalty. Makes the stop and no gain. Question is, can they get there to use that run game late in the game with them down 13?
Yeah,
it's going to be tough.
That's a great question, and that brings up Alex Hornibrook once again, is needing to make plays in that pass game, and he needs wide receivers to get it done for him.
Hornibrook steps up and nearly had it picked off again. He threw it right to Smith, the freshman defensive back. Now the fans are getting restless here.
And the fans should be. That was once again a bad decision. Danny Davis theoretically is the place to go to. It's man-to-man coverage, high safety, work the middle of the field, but that doesn't mean the guy's open.
He never got out of his break.
Exactly. It was great coverage by Minnesota. And it once again looked like Alex Hornibrook had made up his decision. I'm going to this guy come hell or high water, and Danny Davis was not open.
So Grosek, the third down back, is in. 3rd and 10. Hornibrook outside the pocket, says go downfield. Tip ball, sideline, intercepted. Julian Huff picked it off. And look who's at the bottom of the pile with his brother, but his twin Jacob, 2 and 20. The twin brothers in the defensive side for Minnesota.
And Alex Hornibrook is trying to make a play by extending it, getting off to the left side, and just throws it back inside. The throw wasn't the problem in terms of making the decision to throw it in the first place. It was ball placement. You have to put it on the body of the receiver. That's probably the 6th or 7th time this evening that we've seen Hornibrook be off target, especially on the high side, and that was another look at it. Danny Davis was there, potentially could have converted, and the ball was just high.
Now see if Minnesota can run some clock here and have a successful drive again. Up 13, trying to win this game for the first time since 03. Corner blitz. They'll screen against it. Ottman Bell across midfield. It's a gain of 8. So look, those twin brothers, the Huffs, they have said before that when they were younger, one of them would have a good game, the other one would not. It was almost impossible for them to have a good day at the same time. But in their last game, on the defensive side, they both get to play with a targeting penalty against Cashman. And maybe, just maybe, the defense will salt away Paul Bunyan's axe for the Gophers. Ibrahim. It's been very difficult for Wisconsin to tackle him the first time they touch him.
Ibrahim is an efficient runner. And what I mean by that, so many times it's a muddied look in a run attempt. It's not blocked perfectly. You have hands and arms and hats sticking in there, and it's up for the running back to create your own shot sometimes. And that's where the efficiency comes from. Do I get positive yards even though it's a muddied look? And Ibrahim does so often, like we saw in that play.
Morgan back in on a first down. Ibrahim inside the 30 to the 26. It takes Edwards, the senior linebacker. So these 16 Wisconsin seniors, so successful, 41-11. The last thing you want is to go out losing this game at home.
Yeah, you do not want that to be part of your legacy. And that group of seniors have won a lot of games, specifically 41 of them with their head coach Paul Chryst coming at the same time. And you don't want to be that program that lets the axe go back to Minnesota.
Ibrahim stretching out inside the 25, so it's going to be a 3rd down and a short for Minnesota. Under 2 to go in this 3rd quarter. 22 of the last 26 plays, running plays for the Gophers. Tanner Morgan's just 7 for 13 in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about the pass game, and that's not who P.J. Fleck is. He wasn't that at Western Michigan, and he isn't that here at Minnesota. It's about a physical run game, and then everything else is set up by that.
PJ Fleck's final game in Western Michigan against these Badgers. Morgan, sideline, shots, and he mistimed his jump. And it's batted away by Wild Goose. 4th down.
That play call would have told me that potentially Minnesota would go for it on 4th down, and we see the field goal unit coming on. But 3rd and 3, we just talked about how the offensive line of scrimmage for Minnesota has controlled this matchup against the defensive line for Wisconsin. 3rd and 3, I like my chances of putting Seth Green back in there in that Wildcat and getting physical. It's worked 3 times already in short yardage situations tonight.
Carpenter from 42 for a 16-point game. It is good. So Gaglianone had an early miss for Wisconsin. Carpenter's been very good for Minnesota.
Well, PJ Fleck certainly knows this. It was going to take a complete game, and that's who PJ Fleck is. That's who they were at Western Michigan, this coaching staff. The majority of them, they win kind of holistically, all phases of the game, and special teams have been buttoned up on Minnesota's side.
Carpenter to the end zone for a touchback. 16-point game, still a 2-score game, and Taylor bottled up by Julian Huff. So his brother Jacob leads the team in tackles. Julian has the interception and his 4th tackle right there. What a day for those twin brothers. That was Taylor's 18th carry for a $113. Incomplete. Davis the target. 3rd down coming up, and you talk about a short-circuited pass game.
Yeah, it's not about just the quarterback. The pass game is protection and quarterback throwing the ball accurately and decision-making by the quarterback, and we've seen Hornibrook throw into coverage a couple of times, and then he's getting 0 to no help out of his wide receivers, and we've seen Danny Davis drop a couple of them, and as well as A.J. Taylor. Just doesn't work in the pass game currently for Wisconsin.
Remember what he told us earlier this year when we had their first game? He said, I want to be better outside the pocket, and we've just not seen that so far in this game. Groshek is well short. It's 4th down, Wisconsin. You can't veritably go for it here,
no,
can
you can't. Not. I don't even think Paul Chris would think about it. You have another quarter, and this game's not out of reach by any stretch of the imagination in terms of logistically, but it might be out of reach because of the way the offense and particularly the pass game for Wisconsin is playing currently. Long pass is just 13 yards. Minnesota's playing great defense. Throw it in front, make a good tackle, and force a punt.
Goldie is excited. The Badgers are not. Will the Axe go to Minnesota for the first time in 15 years? Find out. Welcome back to ESPN College Football, presented by ExxonMobil as part of the Jiffy Lube Rivalry Series. Jump around happens in Badgerland, even when the Badgers are trailing, as they are right now, 23-7, and punt time for Wisconsin's offense. This punt is a sidewinder out of bounds off the foot of Connor Allen. Time now for our Pacific Life game summary, and it's been the special teams and defense for the most part for the Gophers getting them there.
Yeah, the defense has played well in terms of not allowing Jonathan Taylor to hurt them and forcing the ball into Alex Hornibrook's hands in a sense, but it's special teams, and to win games like this, Minnesota hasn't exactly been successful in recently. They have to play well in all phases of the game, and right now Minnesota by and large has done exactly that. So Tanner Morgan hasn't had to do a ton in the pass game. Manage the run game at the line of scrimmage, some decision making in the run pass option game, but Tanner Morgan, when he's had to, has come through by and large tonight.
If you do this right, this drive can take you down in like the 8 or 7 minute mark, depending on the result of the drive. But you can Wisconsin the Badgers here. You can do what they like to do to you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the Badgers like to possess it in a physical downhill run game, but Oh, by the way, that's who Minnesota wants to be. I think the absence of Olive Songopolu is front and center right now. Minnesota wants to run it. Plays basically even. It just seems like Jonathan Taylor, even though his yards are up there, his effect on the game has been muted to some extent. And then the pass game for Wisconsin just has not been there tonight.
Ibrahim driving the pile all the way to the 46, 45 and a half. And so it's going to be third down and very short. Over 100 yards now for Ibrahim.
You would think this would be another place for Seth Green in the third and short situation. The Swiss Army knife may actually be the Wildcat quarterback as we speak, number 17. Paulson will be out to the left. Typically the tight end comes in motion. The question is if it's going to be a lead or whether Ibrahim is going to get it around the left side once again from this formation.
They whittle the play clock down once again. There's Paulson in motion, and they do run it straight ahead. Green for a first down.
It's a pretty simple little concept, a nice little package that's been ultra productive for Minnesota in situations, short yardage in particular. Converted a couple fourth downs. Paulson comes in motion, becomes the extra blocker in the box, kicks out the end, and then it's Seth Green at 240 that just runs up between the tackle box and converts. Grinding the clock, Jason, as you talked about.
And credit the coaching staff and the freshman quarterback, Morgan, for watching the play clock all the way down, essentially to zero with every snap. Ibrahim sidestepping for a yard. This Minnesota roster is more than half freshmen.
That's unbelievable.
51.7% freshmen for PJ Fleck. If they win, they go to a bowl game and they get a couple weeks worth of extra practice, which could be hugely important with a pretty soft schedule off the top next year for this team.
That is such a good point. It's essentially bowl practice is like getting another set of spring practices. When players are growing and maturing as redshirt freshmen or true freshmen, that it cannot be overstated, the value in that in building a program.
We asked the offensive coordinator, Kurt Soraka, this week, how important would these bowl practices be? And before he answered, he kind of took a breath, thought about it, and just said, oh, be huge. I mean, you could tell the visceral reaction to what that would mean to his offense was substantial.
Yeah, no question about it. As Minnesota finds themselves in a 3rd and 6, typically it's a mixed down, meaning you can throw it or run the football, but keep an eye on Tanner Morgan here. He hasn't kept the football in a true quarterback run for a while.
Redshirt freshman out of the state of Kentucky. Morgan to throw. Down the middle for Johnson and a first down, Minnesota. That was a dagger.
And that's been the difference most of this game is when Minnesota has needed one. This is a run-pass option. It's the zone run inside, and then the quarterback, Tanner Morgan, pulls it after the second-level defenders for Wisconsin are invited up to tackle Ibrahim. The physical run game inside leads to a really good slant hookup with Taylor Johnson over the middle of the football behind that second level.
Williams in as the tailback. Williams breaks the tackle. Away he goes. Touchdown, Gophers. This time, a Barber led to a rushing touchdown for Minnesota.
Well, cue the axe for Minnesota. It's going back to Minneapolis, and I'm not exactly sure how this works. We can look down and still see the axe is still in its case, and Wisconsin certainly doesn't know what it looks like to give it up. None of these players do.
The tradition for Wisconsin has become that only the seniors get to touch the axe, but Minnesota is going to ambush the sideline after this recovery from Barber. One play for Williams, and Goldie's got a big old smile on his face. Here, Badgers and Gophers living in harmony, but one is bragging inside, and it's the gentleman in the yellow. 30-7 is your score. The Gophers over the Badgers trying to win this series for the first time in a decade and a half. Nothing going right for Wisconsin. November 8th, 2003. You may remember it if you're a Gopher fan. Jim Sorgi to Owen Daniels for a touchdown. It's an 18-point first half deficit. They came back though to tie it, but Reese Lloyd not only sticks the kick, but then just absolutely bum rushes the sideline to get the axe. Wisconsin from November of 2016 decided to troll the Gophers because Twitter didn't exist the last time that happened. Looks like this will be the year for that to change, and congratulations to Reese Lloyd, whose phone will no longer ring on the day of Minnesota and Wisconsin to ask what it was like last time a win happened for his Gophers. Hornibrook to the sideline and way incomplete. Keandre Thomas already celebrating in the defensive backfield for Minnesota, and you talk about importance here. Minnesota's going to go to a bowl game with a win, and Hornibrook, who's back from that concussion, has not played well.
No, he really hasn't, and he's been off target. His decision making has been shoddy, and when he didn't place the football properly, he just didn't have a lot of help at the wide receiver position in particular.
That's a long throw, and it looked like it was intercepted. Let's see who comes up with the ball. It is Gopher football. Picked off by Chris Williamson. Another turnover for a rabid bunch of Gophers.
First down, Minnesota.
This is a really nice break by Chris Williamson, but this ball, as you talked about, it's late to the outside and the ball was left slightly inside. Those are all things that lead to balls outside being intercepted, and that really was quintessential Alex Hornibrook's night, just being a little bit off, and in a handful of instances it has cost his team like it did right there.
He'll have a bowl game to recalibrate as he did last year with such a strong bowl game. Williams on the run. This is big as well for Minnesota as they look like they're going to hand one more game to Blake Cashman, their senior linebacker, who went out in the first half with a targeting penalty. Had Minnesota lost, he would not have had any more college football to play.
Blake Cashman actually might be ready to storm the field. Looking closely, keep an eye if number 36 shows his face again, and he might be the first one to the axe.
By rule, you only have to remain in the locker room for the duration of the game.
That's what I'm thinking.
Under supervision, and then you burst through the door.
No question.
To go get the axe.
I think 36, Cashman, is going to reappear. I certainly would if I was him.
That earlier drive, we were talking about this with our statistician Ed Spita, that earlier drive in the second half was the longest drive in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, time-wise, 9 minutes and 16 seconds, 15 plays. You talk about a dagger. A young team that's learning how to win in a rivalry game right in front of us. That's how you do it. 15 plays over 9 minutes when you needed to make something good happen, and that's what it looks like. Also talk about 17 points and counting, really, off of turnovers.
Yep.
That's also usually what Wisconsin does.
For a defense that gave up 646 against Illinois. 3:46 to go here. Fourth down, Minnesota. They're going to go for it. Green, the quarterback, in that Wildcat formation again. And he'll run a lead play for himself, and it looks like he's short. Although the second look at the spot from the far side official seems like he's there. So we're going to check the spot here. It is a first down, Minnesota.
I thought he was short by a football on this one, and I thought he had it by a football earlier in the game, but here we are. But Seth Green in that Wildcat, or whatever we want to call it, has been very productive. The tight end, Paulson comes in motion, adds a hat to the box, and then it's really just a zone read situation. And there's that happy mascot again.
Yeah, Goldie is thrilled right now. It's like he's got a painted on smile.
Goldie has put on some weight since that 94 thing we saw.
Williams on the run. And second down coming up. Look, the axe is one of the great trophies. Paul Bunyan's axe, one of the great trophies in college football. We decided that we were going to survey our crew on what the best rivalry trophy is. So these are the 8 that we ended up with. Paul Bunyan's axe, the Fremont cannon, couple of boots that you really care about because you played for the bronze boot. The troll, which you became when we discussed the possibility of the bronze boot losing.
I held that bronze boot in my hands twice post-game. I was not going to let that lose in the first round.
Williams again. He wants more, and he's got it for 6. Who knew Ibrahim and Williams would be Barber and Maroney?
One of the several dozen, it seems like, freshmen, true freshmen on this team is Bryce Williams. 14 bowl practices are their gift after this one, plus about a 6.5 foot axe to take back to Minneapolis.
PJ Fleck and his defense, 24 points off 4 turnovers from Alex Hornibrook. Again, this is a defense that was beleaguered enough that he fired his defensive coordinator. Joe Rossi, the interim defensive coordinator and defensive line coach, after they gave up 646 yards to Illinois November 3rd, it looked like it was going to be a lost season.
Yeah.
A bowl was definitely something of a pipe dream, and they have turned it into what looks like it's going to be a 6-6 record. You see the change November 4th, immediately after that Illinois game, and a significant difference as Wisconsin will have it from the 25. Let's award the rivalry trophy championship because the boot didn't make it. Is it Paul Bunyan's axe or the troll? I have no idea what the troll is.
What in the world?
It's Concordia Moorhead against St. Olaf, Rosen Island's favorite school.
You got basically almost an all Minnesota final.
I choose the axe. You?
Yeah, I think I might go with the axe too because our producer Brian Boyle kind of make me.
You would have voted for the troll if he wasn't pressuring you?
I think the troll was coughed up by some wild animal somewhere. That looks like a fur ball.
Send your cards and letters to Kelly Stauffer if you're with Concordia Moorhead or St. Olaf. Groshek a run to the 45-yard line. Huff with the tackle. But how about Minnesota? I mean, you don't win in this game for 15 years. It's pretty easy to say, oh, here we go again. And that never even came into play because Wisconsin wasn't really in this game after the middle of the third quarter.
Consider an important part in the second half. Wisconsin got the ball to start the second half, and on 4th and 4, they threw an outside fade route that was badly thrown by their quarterback because the message was we need to get something on this drive. The ensuing possession by Minnesota, same situation, 4th and 4, they lined up and kicked a field goal because it was the same mental game. We need something on the board. The teams needed something differently. Wisconsin did not get theirs in that drive, and Minnesota did, and Minnesota hasn't looked back since. Did you follow me there?
I absolutely did.
All right.
4th down didn't go well. Minnesota won. Is that the Cliff's Notes? Danny Davis the catch. Smith ushers him out of bounds, and here comes the axe. Sad to say for the Badger folks, we will follow it in its tour of Camp Randall Stadium. You want to take it off your sideline so they don't conquer your sideline in an imperialistic Big Ten sort of way.
Where do you go with it? Do you actually escort it clear to the Minnesota sideline, or do you set it kind of gently, subtly behind the goalpost or something? Or Wisconsin isn't used to this.
You could just walk away with it too and make them chase you down through the streets of Madison.
You don't want that. Minnesota would find you. It's been a long while since they had that Paul Bunyan's axe in their hands.
The axe march around Camp Randall that has not been seen in a decade and a half. You saw the footage from 2003. Reese Lloyd basically put his foot on the gas pedal and went sprinting away. They're going to put it by the goalpost, which...
That's a good idea.
Why?
You want to steer clear of what's about to happen off of Minnesota's sideline if you have anything to do with Wisconsin.
Davis falling down, reels in a touchdown with just over a minute to go.
And that's a good example of the plays that Wisconsin did not make for the rest of this game. It's a back shoulder throw, well thrown by Alex Hornibrook, and a difficult catch made by Danny Davis. Too little, too late. There were opportunities earlier in this game, and Danny Davis himself dropped a few, and certainly Alex Hornibrook was off target multiple times.
They're going to go for two here. Would have to be a series of onside kicks and unfortunate Gopher events to get Wisconsin back in this game. Hornibrook has a wide open man in the end zone for two. That was very easy for Adam Krumholtz. And there is the pole axe. Onside kick coming at 37 of 15. And they will do a little trickery and pop it this direction.
It's a flag on the play.
Gophers have it with Rashad Bateman. It is a cold day in Madison.
PJ may be frozen stiff before he gets off the field.
Some Gopher fans thought it was going to be longer than a cold day in Madison until they got a win in this series. And finally, in the Arctic air of November 2018, there are new axe handlers on the move. Minnesota claims Paul Bunyan's axe for the first time in 15 years. For the seniors of Wisconsin, a loss they never expected or imagined. And for Minnesota, with a team of more than half the guys who were playing high school football last year or 2 seasons ago, they now have an object and a coach and a group together to rally around as they go bowling for the first time for PJ Fleck. They're going to chop down the goalposts at Camp Randall before the night's over. Bowl game coming for both of these teams, but Wisconsin, for the first time since '03, falls to Minnesota. Olivia with PJ Fleck.
Coach, you told us the other day that this rivalry is so much more than all of us. What does it mean to you to turn the tide after 14 years?
Well, this is for everybody. We're a small part of it. This tradition has been going on for 128 years. We're to suspect, that's what I told our team, Told them at halftime, don't be afraid to be a legend. Don't be afraid to break the streak and be elite, and they did that. Got to give Wisconsin a lot of credit. It's a heck of a rivalry. It's a lot of fun to coach in. I'm so proud of our players, so proud of our fans for traveling, and what a special moment.
Now, Coach, I count 6 wins. You got a bowl berth now. How do you describe this journey?
This has been the biggest roller coaster journey of my head coaching career. I know for a lot of our coaches, youngest team in America, had a lot of highs, had a lot of lows, lost a teammate along the way, and this is what Row the Boat's all about. Keep your oar in the water, and no matter what happens to you, you'll finally get out of a storm, and we're just so proud of all of our fans and the state of Minnesota. This is for you. This is for everybody else.
I know you're drenched in Gatorade right now. You're probably freezing, but how elite are you feeling?
Maybe the most elite I've ever felt.
Ooh, okay.
This is a very, very special time for our players, our coaches, our players' families, our fans, the state of Minnesota. I'm just so thankful and proud I can be the head coach here.
Thank you, Coach.
You got it. Row the boat, Sky Mile. Go, go.
Forget the oar. They've got a new implement to dip into one of their lakes. It's an axe of gold and red. Final score goes the Gophers' way for the first time in 15 years. Kentucky, Louisville coming up next, but first, back to the studio.